It was Halloween weekend, and this year the holiday fell on a Saturday. My mom always took decorating and candy distribution very seriously. She practically competed with the neighbors to have the most popular trick-or-treat destination. Living on a corner lot in our suburban neighborhood meant we decorated not just the front, but the side of our house as well. Since Halloween was on Saturday, kids began trick-or-treating earlier than usual. Unfortunately, it was a cloudy, cold day with rain threatening in the forecast. After only a few trick-or-treaters seemed to bypass our house, my mom became convinced we needed more decorations to attract them. She couldn't accept that the gloomy weather might be keeping kids indoors. "Go get the remaining Halloween containers from the attic," she insisted, despite my protests that it wasn't necessary. Reluctantly, I climbed the ladder to our attic, which sits directly above my bedroom. The holiday containers were organized systematically, and I found a couple of Halloween boxes still stored there. After grabbing one that looked promising, I began dragging it toward the attic opening. As I carefully lowered the container down the ladder, I heard something from the far corner of the attic, like wood cracking under pressure. I glanced toward the wall of storage containers, but dismissed it as typical attic settling sounds. My mom and I spent the next hour putting up additional decorations in our front yard. The wind was picking up, and rain felt imminent. Few trick-or-treaters appeared, leaving my mom disappointed. She'd prepared dozens of homemade goodie bags filled with various candies, and at this rate, most would go undistributed. As the day progressed, I retreated to my room to game on my laptop while Mom handled the sporadic trick-or-treaters downstairs. When rain finally began, it effectively ended our Halloween activities. That evening, while gaming, I heard another crack from the attic above me. Though not entirely unusual, I mentally noted this was the second occurrence. The rain continued into the night, developing into a full thunderstorm. Perfect Halloween ambiance. Being a dedicated gamer in my teens, I often spent Saturday nights indoors instead of socializing. This night was no exception. I stayed up well past my parents' bedtime, gaming while rain pelted our windows. Then I heard something different above me. Footsteps. Initially, I wondered if Mom was storing items in the attic, but it seemed late for such activity. I paused my game and listened carefully. The sounds stopped. After a few minutes, I ventured into the hallway and noticed the attic door was open. Suddenly, I heard noises from downstairs. Sounds of movement in the kitchen, specifically around the refrigerator. My heart began racing. I tiptoed to my parents' bedroom and quietly opened the door. Both were fast asleep. A wave of nausea hit me as reality set in. I gently shook my father awake. "There's someone in the house," I whispered. He sat up immediately. "What?" "Someone's in the kitchen right now, going through the fridge. I think they've been hiding in the attic." My dad, though not particularly large or confrontational, kept a police baton under his bed for emergencies, though I don't ever expected he used it. He told me to stay quiet while he checked the hallway. When he returned, he whispered that he'd seen someone climbing into the attic. He locked our bedroom door and called 911. Mom was awake now too, but we all remained silent and calm. Dad went downstairs to unlock the front door for police. When officers arrived, they found a homeless man hiding behind the container wall in the attic's far corner. All those sounds I'd heard had indeed been made by a person. The man appeared dirty and somewhat frightening, but he was surprisingly straightforward and honest. He explained that he'd simply walked in when he noticed our front door was open the previous day. Having nowhere else to sleep, he'd brought one of our blankets to the attic and had been eating from a jar of peanut butter he'd found there. The entire situation was deeply disturbing. I often wonder how differently things might have unfolded if my father or I had confronted the man instead of calling police. My parents chose not to press charges.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
When I turned 18, I convinced my parents to let me throw a Halloween house party while they were away for the weekend. The rules were strict, closed invitation only, no strangers, and the house had to be cleaner afterward than before. I invited about 50 people, and roughly 40 showed up. The party began around 6 p.m. as darkness fell, spanning both our backyard and first floor. My parents had left money for refreshments, sodas, and food for the kitchen. Though I'd promised a non-alcoholic party, I suspect they knew better. My older friend brought DJ equipment, and by dark, the party was in full swing. I'd been careful about the guest list, recognizing nearly everyone who arrived. Most people greeted me personally upon entering. I drank moderately, wanting to stay somewhat responsible as the host. As the night progressed and guests grew drunker, one of my friends emerged from the house looking puzzled. "Who's that guy in the skeleton bodysuit inside?" he asked. I hadn't noticed anyone in such a costume and went inside to investigate. A few people were hanging out in the kitchen, so I asked about the skeleton-suited figure. "Yeah, seemed like he was snooping around the house," someone confirmed. Concerned, I asked if anyone had invited him or knew who he was. No one did. I found him walking down the stairs and approached him directly. "Who are you?" "Mike," he replied in a deep voice that sounded older than my typical guests. "I was using the bathroom upstairs." His frame was stockier than my friend's, not muscular, just broader. "Who invited you?" I pressed. "Tom." I didn't know any Tom among my guests. "Who's Tom? Can you take your mask off?" He ignored my questions completely, walking past me toward the front door and leaving without another word. I immediately went upstairs to check if any rooms had been disturbed or if anything was stolen. All doors except for the bathroom were closed and nothing appeared missing. I locked the front door and told several friends about the strange encounter. I asked around about who might have invited the skeleton-masked stranger, but nobody knew anything about him. Eventually, I let it go. The party wound down around midnight. Most guests departed, with a few close friends staying to help clean. It had been successful overall. My friend Vinny stayed overnight on the downstairs couch. After changing into pajamas and brushing my teeth, I joined Vinny in the living room. We had some drinks and watched funny YouTube videos on TV. My 14-year-old sister had been asleep during the party, being too young to participate. We were being quiet to avoid waking her when we both heard noises from upstairs, footsteps. Assuming we'd disturbed my sister, I expected to hear her door open or movement toward the bathroom. When neither happened, I grew confused. I went upstairs to check on her, knocking on her door. No response. I opened it slightly and saw her sleeping peacefully. So what had caused those sounds? I checked my parents' room and noticed the door wasn't properly closed. I could push it open without turning the knob, which was odd since I'd made sure it was shut before the party. I looked inside without turning on lights, then backed out. Through the door crack, I saw him, the guy in the skeleton bodysuit. There was no mistake about what I was seeing. Impressively, I didn't run or scream. Instead, I pretended not to notice him, pulled the door closed, and went downstairs to tell Vinny. "That guy from before is in the house," I whispered. Vinny called 911 while I tiptoed back upstairs to my sister's room. I woke her gently and explained the situation, ensuring she'd stay quiet while following me downstairs. She handled it remarkably well without panicking. We met Vinny in the kitchen by the back door, went outside to the backyard, cut through the side yard to the front, and rang our neighbor's bell repeatedly. Our neighbor let us wait with him for police. Before officers arrived, however, the intruder escaped through my parents' room window, which was now open. Their closet door was also ajar, where Dad kept his safe. It appeared someone familiar with the safe's location had attempted to break into it or remove it entirely. The man had obviously entered by simply walking into the party again. It could have been anyone, but it was clearly someone who knew about my party, was older than my typical guests, and knew about my parents' safe. My sister told our parents about the incident, which ensured that was the last party I was ever allowed to throw at their house.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
This happened in 2016 when I was 15, my final year of trick-or-treating. I wanted to make it memorable, so my laid-back mom let me plan a multi-day celebration. The night before Halloween, I'd have a sleepover with friends Davis and Zach. We'd skip school on Halloween, go trick-or-treating that evening, then I'd have a sleepover with just my girlfriend Amber. Our basement had recently been renovated into a man cave, which we were excited to use. The basement featured a long hallway leading to the main room, but the hallway light switch didn't work, creating a creepy atmosphere that seemed perfect for Halloween night. Around 11 p.m., after Mom made us cookies, we went downstairs to the cave. We'd just finished watching the original Scream and were starting Paranormal Activity, which none of us had seen before. I paused the movie almost immediately because the motion-detected backyard light turned on, flooding our room with brightness and ruining our creepy ambiance. I waited for the 30-second timer to shut it off, then resumed the movie. 30 seconds later, the light activated again. I was getting annoyed. "What keeps making it turn on?" Davis asked. "No clue," I replied. After another 30 seconds, the light turned off again, and I restarted the movie. At this point, I wanted to investigate what was triggering it, so I asked Davis and Zach to come upstairs with me to look through the back door. By the time we reached the door, the backyard light had turned off, making it difficult to see anything. We waited 5 minutes for something to happen, but nothing did. We returned to the den and decided to abandon the movie for the night, instead talking and browsing our phones. About 2 hours later, everyone was asleep except me. I was scrolling through my phone when the familiar glow of the motion light came through the window for the 4th time. Exhausted, I figured it was just kids trying to prank us, but the more I considered it, the less sense it made. I decided to check the backyard one final time. As expected, no one was there. I gave up and went to sleep. The next night arrived quickly. Soon I had a bag full of candy, though I felt somewhat sad knowing this marked the end of my childhood trick-or-treating years. I tried to focus on enjoying the night rather than being nostalgic. We were at one of our final houses when suddenly Amber yelled out in pain. "What happened?" we asked. "Someone threw a rock at me," she said. I turned around to see a guy in a clown mask standing about 15 feet behind us. This was during the clown epidemic of 2016. I told him to get lost, but he just stood there. Analyzing him more closely, I realized this was clearly a grown man. He wore only the clown mask. The rest of his costume was regular clothing. We kept walking, but the man simply stood, motionless. At this point, anxiety got the better of us, and we called it a night, skipping our last few houses. We returned to my house so my friends could get picked up, leaving just Amber and I looking at our candy spread across the den floor. She asked if we could watch a movie, so I decided to finish Paranormal Activity from the previous night. I remember the scene perfectly. The male character was walking around searching for his girlfriend when suddenly the screen went black and our dimmed cave lights went out. Amber and I looked at each other. The power had gone out. This immediately made me paranoid. Our house had never lost power except during storms. I checked my weather app. Conditions were normal that night, not even light rain. I told Amber to stay in the cave, but she felt too scared down there, so she accompanied me upstairs to investigate. The house generator was in the backyard, which gave me a terrible feeling in my stomach. Memories of the previous night crept back, and this time I didn't have Davis or Zach with me. Amber wasn't particularly strong either. All sorts of worst-case scenarios ran through my mind as I opened the sliding door to the backyard. All I heard were crickets chirping. Maybe I was overthinking things. Amber and I passed by the motion light, which didn't activate, another concerning sign. I was about 5 feet from the generator when I thought I heard a twig snap. Amber and I looked toward the forest at the far end of our yard. We heard only crickets, but felt like we were being watched. I nearly felt sick to my stomach. I decided we'd rather stay inside without lights than remain outside any longer. Amber started making her way back inside when I saw him, the same guy in the clown mask, standing beside our shed. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, as if he was trying to intimidate us. Then he suddenly jumped forward and started sprinting towards us. I ran to the back door and slammed it shut after Amber. We rushed downstairs to the cave and hid behind the bar in the corner. That's when I realized I'd never locked the back door, and we heard a slam from upstairs. Everything went silent in the man cave. Amber started texting 911 because she was too scared to speak, explaining that there was an intruder in our house. Minutes felt like hours, probably only 10 minutes total, when the sound I'd been dreading finally came. The basement door opening. I heard footsteps descending the stairs and walking down the hallway. My girlfriend was breathing too loudly, so I had to cover her mouth. The footsteps approached our direction and stopped. I began thinking my only option might be to fight if he discovered our hiding spot. I grabbed a beer bottle from behind the bar and mentally prepared myself for combat if necessary. The room stayed silent for quite a while, but then we heard sirens outside. I realized this was the perfect distraction and moment to act. In a split second, I jumped up, ran at him, and swung the bottle at his head. But I tripped and fell after swinging, hitting the ground hard. Looking up, I saw the man with the clown mask from earlier. I think his mask somewhat absorbed my swing because he barely flinched. I realized this had been a stupid idea because he seemed about to go upstairs after hearing the sirens anyway. He looked down at me on the floor. I was about to yell for Amber to run as I scrambled to get up. My legs felt numb, and I realized my life could potentially end right there. But the police could be heard outside. The man stared for another moment before running upstairs. We heard the back door open and slam again. I ran upstairs to let the police in and told them the intruder had gone out back. Unfortunately, police never caught this guy, to my knowledge. I can't go down to that man cave alone anymore without feeling anxious, even to this day. We started hanging out at Amber's place for a while after that incident. There's nothing I can do but look back and feel grateful that we're still alive. I'll never forget the feeling of looking up and seeing that clown mask staring down at me as I flailed helplessly on the ground.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
When I was 17, my family moved into an old Victorian house just 2 weeks before Halloween. The previous owners had left behind several antique pieces, including an ornate mirror in what became my bedroom. The mirror had an elaborate carved wooden frame with strange symbols that looked almost like twisted faces when you looked at them from certain angles. My mom loved the vintage aesthetic and insisted we keep it, despite my dad's suggestion that we store it in the basement. "It adds character to the room," she said, hanging it directly across from my bed. The first few nights were normal enough, though I noticed the mirror seemed to reflect light strangely. Even in complete darkness, it always appeared to have a faint glow around its edges. I mentioned this to my parents, but they dismissed it as my eyes adjusting to the new room. As Halloween approached, I decided to throw a small gathering. Nothing like a full party, just 5 close friends coming over to watch horror movies and hand out candy to trick-or-treaters. My parents would be home, so everything would be low-key and supervised. The night started perfectly. We'd set up in the living room with a good view of the front door for candy duty. Around 9 p.m., my friend Jake went upstairs to use the bathroom. He came back down looking puzzled. "Hey, who's the kid in your room?" he asked. "What kid?" I replied. "My younger brother was at a friend's house for the night." There's definitely someone up there. I saw them in your mirror when I walked past your room. This sent a chill down my spine, but I figured maybe it was just the way the hallway light hit the mirror. I went upstairs to check, and my room was empty. The mirror reflected only my own concerned face staring back. I returned downstairs and told everyone it was nothing, probably just shadows or the way the light played tricks. We continued watching our movie, The Ring, which, in retrospect, was probably not the best choice given the circumstances. About an hour later, my friend Sarah needed to grab her jacket from my room where she'd left it. She came back down almost immediately, looking pale. "There's definitely someone up there," she whispered to me, pulling me aside. "I saw a figure in your mirror, standing right behind where you would be if you were looking into it, but when I turned around, nothing was there." Now I was genuinely concerned. I asked everyone to come upstairs with me to investigate together. We stood in my doorway, all 6 of us, staring at the mirror. It showed our reflection perfectly normally, nothing unusual at all. "Maybe we're just psyching ourselves out because it's Halloween," suggested my friend Marcus. We were about to head back downstairs when the trick-or-treaters started arriving in bigger groups. For the next 2 hours, we were busy handing out candy and didn't think much about the mirror incident. Around 11 p.m., after the last trick-or-treater had gone home, my friends started getting picked up by their parents. Jake was the last to leave, and as his mom's car pulled away, I waved goodbye from my bedroom window. That's when I noticed something in the mirror's reflection that made my blood run cold. In the mirror, I could see myself waving at the window, but there was someone else in the reflection, a figure standing directly behind me. I spun around quickly, but my room was empty. The mirror reflected only my own concerned face staring back. I ran downstairs to tell my parents, but they were already asleep. I spent the rest of the night on the living room couch, refusing to go back to my room. The next morning, I told my parents everything. My dad, who had never liked the mirror anyway, agreed to help me move it to the basement. As we carried it downstairs, I noticed something I'd never seen before. Carved into the back of the frame, almost hidden by years of dust, were the words, "What you see is what sees you." We stored the mirror in the farthest corner of the basement, facing the wall. I never saw the figure again after that, but sometimes, late at night, I could swear I heard faint sounds coming from the basement, like someone tapping on glass, trying to get out.
If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't vanish into the darkness without hitting that like button. Share your scariest experience in the comments below, because your story might be featured next. And remember, the scariest thing is missing out, so subscribe now before the next nightmare finds you.